I started to think, what if he just keeps coming at this pace, and then slowly but surely, I would eke out half a second and half a second, and in the end it was 10 seconds at one point, and I was so over the moon with that. It was like how badly we've been beaten at the start of the year to that. The feeling inside my helmet was incredible.
That's World Superbike champion and Imola winner Jonathan Rea on his emotional win. He's our guest on this week's podcast. Well, welcome everyone to the Greg's Garage Pod with co-host Jason Pridmore. I'm Greg, and Jason is on the line somewhere. Hi, JP. What's up?
I'm here, G-Dub. It's raining in California in May. That is huge news out here. Big news. So
yeah, kind of weird.
I ventured out this morning and watched everybody driving around at 20 mile an hour, and it's barely raining. I mean, you'd still be on slicks. Oh my God.
Didn't you just get back from Chicago? How was the weekend and all that?
I just did a whirlwind. On Friday night, I loaded up, drove out to Buttonwillow, and was teaching all day out there with Let's Ride. We had a bunch of one-on-ones. And then Saturday night, I drove down to LAX, got a hotel, flew to Chicago Sunday, taught all day Monday with MotoVid, and then flew home Monday night. So I got home at like 1:30 in the morning, and it was a quick 3 days, but a lot of travel. It's good though. Keeps me young, G-Dub.
Blackhawk. I love that place.
Blackhawk.
I love it.
And the weather was and the weather was so perfect. Like every time I go there, it seems like it's raining or about to rain, or we're bracing ourselves by noon for rain, or it's hot and humid. It was perfect. It was like 41 degrees in the morning, so it was a little chilly. But there wasn't a cloud in the sky all day long, and we had a great group of students up there, great group of people. And I remember when you used to help me with those days when you lived in that area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to getting back to MotoAmerica in a couple of weeks. It's just part of, for the United States, I love this time of year up in that part of the country. It's
so good, isn't it?
Yeah, it's phenomenal. I mean, the weather's good. The people are great. The food's good. The looks beautiful. You know what I mean?
Word on the street. Word on the street, G-Dub, is that...
What street is that? Go ahead.
I'm not sure, but word on the street is G-Dub might be making a comeback and getting in some leathers up there, possibly.
That is unknown, unconfirmed at this point, but I got my fingers crossed. Absolutely.
Because I'm going to be there, so we might have to... Maybe we'll do a special podcast from the motorcycles.
Maybe.
Maybe. Probably do it. Don't you think we could do it?
Well, I mean, if I brought my road helmet with me, which is just, a normal ARAI helmet, whatever, that I put a Cardo system in where I have like a microphone and all that stuff, I definitely could record something right from the back. Should I bring it back? Like just tape my iPhone to the front of the bike and then broadcast? It'll be like 1998, 99, 2000 all over again.
I know. Now it's just so much easier to do that stuff, though. It's so much easier to think about what you did back then, like that many years ago, how much easier it would be now probably to get that done.
So much easier, yeah. I mean, for those that don't know, way back in the day when I used to participate in AMA Superbike races.
Well put. That's well put. That is participate. There you go.
Right. So I used to have a camera, an earpiece in, and a microphone, and I used to commentate live from the saddle of the motorcycle while we did live races. And honestly, Jason, the most famous, what we used to do is get me mic'd up and have the camera rolling earlier on in the weekend. And I would do the lap around the track, like for pre-race. Yeah. And the most famous one I ever did, and I have no idea why, no rhyme or reason, was at Road America. And it was for the Formula Extreme race. We used to remember we used to do Formula Extreme and 750 Supersport, like in the same program.
That's right.
That type of thing. And it was like pre-race, and I went around, I just talked, they just started me at start-finish line, and I would talk through the gears, and, it's a long lap, and especially with me talking, I mean, it was probably 3.5 minutes, but, it was a lot of fun, but nowadays, and back then, we had a full-blown TV truck, and we had an airplane that would circle the racetrack up high, so the signal would bounce from my motorcycle to the airplane, back down to a truck, for the onboard camera specifically, and then that would actually be piped into the TV truck. So it was, nowadays, I mean, we could probably just do live Facebook right from your phone because the signal's pretty good out there.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Cool. No, it is good. And just to think how easy racing must have been for you back then, where you could talk and race at the same time.
I wish I had a phone right now where I could like just hit buttons like beep, beep, and just spell out like "fu" on the with the buttons.
That.
You know what I mean?
I really appreciate that. No, it's good.
You know what? All right, you mentioned the weather where you were. That was great, but let's get right into World Superbike Imola, Italy, where the weather was kind of iffy all weekend, and they actually had to cancel a race due to weather. But before we get into all that, because it was pretty action packed in the races that they did get in, Jason, they got 2 races in. They got one race number 1, full blown 19 lapper, and surprise, surprise, Jonathan Rea over Alvaro Bautista by 7.8 seconds, and Topak Razgatlioglu, what a great run for him in third, the first of our independent riders. Then Vandermark, Haslam, Melandri, Lowe's, Rinaldi, Zanetti, and Reiterberger. There's your top 10. Then we had the Tissot Superpole race that happened, and Johnny Rea won again, this time by 2 seconds over Chaz Davis. Bautista in third, Vandermark, Lowe's, Haslam, Razgatlioglu, Sykes, Torres, and Reiterberger. Not even close, Jason, to the story, though, of the entire weekend. Chaz Davis broke the track record, had pole position, had a problem in race number 1, and was out. And he looked poised to win another one there. Obviously, Rea wins. Bautista struggles. I mean, what do you want to talk about? You know, Razgatlioglu was fast, got on the podium. I mean, what do you want to talk about first? There's so much great stuff that happened over the weekend.
Yeah. And, you know, the thing is that it's, how do you, like, really, where do you start? I think Chaz getting pole position is a good starting point, only because we've all been kind of waiting, and we've heard all the people talking all the crap that they talk about, like, why is Chaz not even close and this and that. And I get that Imola is a little different. I also know that Bautista tested there. I know he says that, you know, he's not really a big fan of the circuit itself. The circuit is amazing. It's really good. Yeah, I think that there are probably a few danger areas when you even watch it on TV now. I was lucky enough to race there. But at the end of the day, I said about a month ago that I'd listened to a podcast where Chaz actually talked about, come Imola time, it might be a place where people will get closer to Bautista, and he was dead right. And I don't know. I want to be able to say that this could be the turning point of the season, and I hope it is for the sake of the series. Mm-hmm. Rea rode unreal as usual. What can you say? It's when he gets into a rhythm, I try to put myself in a mind spot that I don't think I was ever in as a rider in my life, where you literally watch the guy and he is pushing as hard as he can on every single lap. I mean, it's so hard to imagine when you look at a 25 lap race, 20 lap race, whatever it is, that a lot of times you'll hear people talk about getting into rhythms and things. It looks like Johnny's rhythm is always 95%, but he makes it look very, very easy. It doesn't look like it's stressed, but you can tell he's riding very, very hard. And watching his performance over the weekend, I thought was really incredible. You could tell that Bautista maybe wasn't as comfortable as he would like to have been there. But I think Chaz was kind of another one of those things that it was nice to see him up front, because he hasn't been that close all year. And for him to do as well as he did, I was really bummed to see him go out of race 1. And I think Rea would be bummed about that too, because essentially Chaz could take points away from Bautista in both races there. And then, of course, they don't even get to do the third race. So it might have been an even bigger point haul for Rea had Chaz been able to stay in there in the first race, and had they even had the second race.
Yeah, no, that's very true. And I actually got a chance to talk to Jonathan Rea, as you know, and as obviously was the top of the show. So we got on the blower yesterday, and the reigning world champ was gracious, as always, with his time, because it actually didn't go that well, and we had to do it again twice. And
oh God, no way, really?
Yeah. And he was totally cool about it. It was just an internet connection thing on his end or whatever, and he's just such a good dude. But so, you know, Jason, I'm kind of like a broken record. So first up, the first question I asked him was very, very simple. Like, how'd the weekend go?
Awesome. You know, so nice. And there's been obviously a tough start to the year, getting beat so bad, and turning up to Imola, a track that we were pretty strong at last year. We just pretty much threw that setting in and put my head down from FP1, and we managed to look like all weekend we had a little bit extra pace, especially in sector 3 and 4. And yeah, super nice to line up on the grid when you know you've got that pace. And we were able to get it done, race one and the Super Pole race. And yeah, unfortunately, the weather played a part in race 3 and got cancelled. So yeah, took maximum points available and pretty happy with our efforts.
So from that standpoint, in qualifying, what happened is that Johnny went out and set a 1:45.307, which broke the track record and looked like he was going to be on pole for a moment. And then all of a sudden, Chaz, I think it was like the last lap, checkered flag was out, lowered that as a 45.18. Jay, talk about the difference though between a straight out qualifying time, like just a close your eyes Hail Mary time, versus getting the data from the practices and the qualifyings and kind of understanding your pace versus the competition.
Well, I mean, what those guys do in Super Pole, having the time to do it, I think the thing that impressed me the most is that we hadn't seen Chaz that close all year. So the fact that he pulled that lap out and the fact that these guys were all under the lap record was pretty incredible, I think. And when Johnny did his lap, it looked controlled. It looked great. When Chaz did his, it looked the same. Like you could tell he was pushing really hard. And Chaz actually caught Johnny coming into the pits. So Johnny was like just getting off the track, and you could see him kind of frantically look back and try to get out of the way the best that he could as Chaz went through. And sometimes as a rider, that can take a tenth or two away from you just by seeing it, Greg. Like how you can see something that kind of influences you, right? And I thought, his lap's going to be gone now. And Chaz still managed to stay in there and do the lap time and get pole. And I don't know if any of us would have put Chaz on pole for a race at this point of the year because of how he had been kind of doing. But when Johnny went out, he had Haslam chasing him. Haslam was just kind of trying to get the toe, and you could see that Rea was just pulling away. But by the time Chaz came around, those guys were on their in laps, and I thought it might distract him a little bit, and it didn't. So I thought it was a tremendous pole position for him.
Yeah, back in 2017, Chaz had set the fastest race lap at Imola in World Superbike, which was a 1:46.3. And in this race, the first race, not Super Bowl race, but the first race, Johnny lowered that at a 1:46.0. So, he talks about this later on, I think in the podcast, or I can't remember what I clipped and what I didn't clip of the conversation and what we talked about off or whatever. But he just kept telling me, like, look, the pace is higher. It's higher. Like, there's no doubt. He hasn't said to me specifically, Bautista's presence has raised the bar, but I think the Bautista's presence in World Superbike is kind of what Tony Elias's presence did for MotoAmerica a couple of years ago. It's just a little couple tenths of a second. It's one thing to go chase one dude and have resignation, like, oh, Johnny Rea's so fast, we're going to just kind of leave it here. Now all of a sudden he's got to go chase Bautista, and everyone else does as well, and that's what we're seeing. And I think that's really impressive, because the other thing to keep in mind is that since the beginning of the year, Chaz also lost 250 RPM like his teammate did. So you can see that it hasn't really affected the Ducati much at all. And
I think when you look back at this race weekend, is the thing I'm going to take from it more than anything is that now we had two guys that were really capable of showing the pace that Bautista has shown all year long. And I speak specifically again for Chaz. I know Johnny has always had it. It'll be interesting to see now from this point of the year on. There's a couple tracks coming up. They're going to go to Jerez next, and that's a track that Bautista is extremely familiar with. And how many times have you heard me say, Greg, that there's really no such thing at that level? There's really no such thing as a home track advantage. And I think that Chaz now has seen the pace. Like, it's going to be such an incredible boost to his confidence because he's actually been able to run the pace of Johnny and Bautista. Had Bautista been so far back and Chaz, like say, won the races and Johnny was back there with Bautista, it would have been a huge confidence for Chaz, but you might have been able to put it on the circuit itself. But the fact that Rea was setting the pace and Chaz seemed like he was able to kind of be there with him, if it wasn't for a mistake in the one race that he got to race, which was the Super Pole race, he made a mistake coming into the final chicane and dropped back and had to go back through Bautista. But it looked like he had pace. That's going to give him a lot of confidence to know that he might be back on to be closer to these guys at every track now coming forward.
Now, you mentioned that, Jason, and that was one of the things that struck me. One was the stability of the Ducati. The other thing was, the brakes. And so I noticed those things, like the difference between the Ducati and the Kawasaki. But as you know, I am no expert at these things. So I asked Jonathan, like, what did you notice when comparing your bike to how the Ducati worked?
100% stability, especially on the brakes, and also changing direction. With the ZX10RR, it's got such a good front end that you can really be aggressive with it, and them inputs don't really make the bike unstable. Seemed like on the brakes they really were suffering with hauling the bike up in the slow chicanes, a lot of backing in. So whilst that's quite good to turn into the apex, it's you can't commit as hard to the apex, with confidence. And like I said, last year we sort of hit the sweet spot at Imola with our bike, and we just went back to that, kind of reverted back to that, and straight from FP1 it was confidence inspiring, and I just built little by little. So it was nice. They were pretty fast in sector 1. It was about break even in sector 2, but sector 3 and 4 I had dialed, and with that gap I was able to be confident in the races that if them guys were close, I had an extra gear, and it was really really nice, because race 1 especially, with Alvaro's pace, especially in the mid to later parts, with his lap time not dropping so much, I started to think, what if he just keeps coming at this pace, and then slowly but surely, I would eke out half a second and half a second, and in the end it was 10 seconds at one point, and I was so over the moon with that. It was like how badly we've been beaten at the start of the year to that. The feeling inside my helmet was incredible.
So for those ignorant Americans out there, the ZX10RR is British or Irish for Z. It's also Canadian for Z. But yeah, Jay, so have you been in that position? I know you've been in the position before where you've had crazy big leads, but have you ever been in the position where you've had and I'm doing air quotes, a losing streak, and then all of a sudden, or you have competition? I can't think back to a time when you've had competition that's as stiff as Bautista is, and then all of a sudden, turn of fortunes, you go to one track and now you're 10 seconds out front instead of being 10 seconds behind him going, how do I figure this out?
Well, it's hard for me to even talk about like my stuff compared to what these guys do at the level that they're at, Greg, in World Superbike. It's just insane to
I understand that, but it's a little different.
And I agree, but I agree with you. I agree. It's a little different. Yeah, as you say, it's a little different. But there was definitely times where it's almost like you want to have somebody pushing you, though, because it allows you to keep your focus up. And I think that as a rider, even when you get a 6, 7, 8 second lead and you've only got 6 laps to go, it's always in the back of your mind of, what if this guy just decides to drop the hammer and come at me at half a second or a full second a lap or something? There's always that little bit of self-doubt, like we heard JD talking about last weekend with 4.5 on his board, and he second guessed himself and thought, does that mean 0.45?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
You get a lot of things go through your brain, but it kind of goes back to what I said earlier, that the way Johnny rides is so mistake-free. Like you just don't see him screwing things up. And it puts a lot of pressure on you as a rider that's chasing to know that the guy in front's probably not going to make any big mistakes. I'm with you, Greg. I saw the differences between what the Ducati had. Like Batista's bike looked a lot looser than Chaz's bike even. And if you watch how Johnny brakes, it reminded me a lot of Tony over here in America, Ilias, because when you go through the first 3 turns there at Imola, it's the quick left, right, left, down a short chute. He went underneath Chaz in that next left. It's pretty fast left-hander. And then you brake hard for a right. But he kind of tipped in and wasn't on the edge of the tire. He was kind of in that spot where it's just off the middle part of the tire. And the Cowie looked incredibly stable on that part of the tire, where he felt like, I think he could just pull the brake lever on even more. And that allowed him to be able to go past Chaz there. The Ducatis just looked a little bit more loose, as you would say. And that could be a characteristic of that track and that place again. But man, the third and fourth sectors, the chicane at the top, after you come out of Acqua Minerale and you go up the top of the hill, that chicane, that is really, I believe, where Johnny was winning the race, because he was so good at getting in there, and his line on the exit, he'd cut across the paint at a different angle than the Ducatis were able to do, unless they slowed their pace.
Well, that was it. Like
And
the transition, wasn't it? It was the line. It was that middle transition, just going from side to side, was just so crisp on the Ducati versus, on the Kawasaki
on the
versus the Ducati. Ducati, it was like slower to get there, so they had to slow down. If they rushed the corner, they were finished on the Ducati. Where Johnny just seemed to like just carve it in, whoop, whoop, carve it out, and he was done. Yeah, I agree.
And he was done.
Done.
It was very agile, so it looked really good.
Yeah. All right. Well, so as you know, race 2 was canceled, Jay, and it would have been the third race of the weekend and all that kind of stuff. You kind of mentioned how there's some parts of it that are of Imola that can be a little dangerous. There's some walls that are close and all that kind of stuff. So obviously there were race fans there. Everybody was there. There were a lot of different emotions that were running the gamut of safety, of wanting to run a race, all that kind of stuff. So, I asked Johnny, there must have been a lot of emotions tied up in the race being canceled.
Oh, there was emotions everywhere. Everyone, there's a side to be had from, riders, manufacturers, fans, organizers and whatnot. And, in the end, I completely support the decision, but I was completely prepared to race as well. I raced in much worse conditions, and the track, whilst it had some standing water in critical points of the track, that wasn't the problem. The problem was the idea of, the track being so, let's say, not forgiving to a crash, and with walls being close and, crashing in the wet, you're not going to slow down too much more than you do in the dry. So I think the organisers saved ourselves from that. But at the same time, the throttle goes both ways. The tyres were, Pirelli done a great job with the tyres, and the asphalt itself definitely wasn't bad at all. So there was a bit of a kerfuffle about, when the start got delayed in the box, and the organisers got, some riders out. Yamaha guys went in one car, and myself and the Ducati guys went in the other car. And straight away, them guys just seemed like pretty, really against riding. And, I wanted to try. There was pockets in the day where it wasn't raining so heavy and there wasn't a lot of standing water, and I seen it as my chance. I already really fast in morning warm up in the wet, some 2.5, 3 seconds quicker than them guys. So it was a chance for me to really make some inroads in the championship. But at the end, Gregorio and the guys in race direction called it, and I support that, because whilst there was a lot to gain, always a lot to lose in them conditions as well. So just really unfortunate, because we actually had a pretty good crowd there, and they hung around patiently in the pelting rain waiting for a race, and they were deprived of one.
I love it, the pelting rain. Now, Jay, obviously we know that sometimes as a rider you have magic that weekend at a racetrack as well. Like, you just kind of know. And I'm not saying that Johnny was a foregone conclusion to win. He was 2.5, 3 seconds quicker though in the wet, earlier in the morning. And yeah, you're looking at giving away 5 points or more, or you know what I mean? Giving it away. Yeah, you're gaining it, so you're kind of giving it away by not having that race. I want to say that this is still a championship. I do. What it looks like to me is that it's a championship that's going to be decided by racetrack characteristics. But it's 43 points. It's the magic Jason Pridmore number right now. The difference between Bautista and Rea is 43 points. Lowe's is unfortunately 123 back. So it looks like World Superbike at the moment. It's a 2-horse race, but there's still a lot of racing to go.
Let's not forget a couple things. Number one, this is the second race of the year they've had to cancel. So the first one was at Aston when it snowed. Remember?
Yeah.
So race 1 at Aston. So this is the second time. So apparently, so there's 50 points up for grabs just in those 2 races. Fair to say that, Alvaro was on it at Aston, obviously, but in racing, anything can happen. When I look at when a track is homologated to race at, it's homologated to race at in any conditions. Now, that said, we were just at VIR, and MotoAmerica postponed the start of the Supersport race because of the rain. Remember how much puddling we had, and that was obviously a very, very smart decision. There was no way that they could have gone out and raced in those conditions with as much standing water as there was. I didn't get to see the track at Imola. There's a lot of elevation there.
He said there's a lot of standing water. But
yeah, and that's the problem. But you're exactly right. There's always going to be a but on this thing
because
if a rider comes in and basically deems in his own mind that the track is unsafe, and it's going to be even more unsafe in the wet. But the organizers decide to think, okay, we can run in this stuff, and it is what it is. What Johnny said, the throttle does work both ways. And Batista at that point, I know he didn't want to ride there in the rain. And you can even hear Johnny say he was 100% supportive of what the organizer said, and this and that. But I know the conditions that people have raced in, and I know how bad they can be. And even if there was some pockets, or even if they shorten the race or they do something to try to get that race in, at that point, if Alvaro, he obviously could have just gone out and cruised and gone slow. And I'm not sure of all the idiosyncrasies of what went on that weekend. But if there's standing water, that's definitely a cause for concern, because you don't want to see bikes hydroplaning into each other and this and that. But you could definitely hear the disappointment in Johnny's voice when he, goes out for morning warm up in the wet, and obviously is going quite fast. There's a big points haul on the table there, and conditions are conditions. And unless it's completely unsafe, then then you're not going to ride if it's that way. But if there were pockets that they felt they could get their race in, it's too bad they didn't get to run the second one.
Yeah, and Johnny never said to me that the track was dangerous or that there were safety. Yeah. He never said that, but I know that that's what happened in talking with some other people. So my big thing is, with this incident, it's now revealed a weakness of the Imola track. And will it be around next year on the calendar, or what are they going to have to do to really make this homologated so when it does rain? And sometimes the standing water, you just can't get rid of it. If you have camber in a corner, which is a great thing for a motorcycle or a car when you're racing around it, it can create standing water. So great in the dry, as opposed to, say, a flat corner, or even a corner that's got a crest to it that would run off on the side. I mean, I prefer, corners with camber. I'm sure you do too. It's like a berm,
Yeah, well,
like turn 6 at Road Atlanta is one of those where if you get right down to the apex of the corner, you have a little bit of a camber there, so you can kind of rail it, and it's fun like that. So,
yeah, well, again, I've ridden Imola, and again, I didn't see it on I didn't get to see the rain part of it, and when and why they canceled it. But we kind of all remember what happened to Bobby down the front straightaway at VIR, where he hydroplaned on the front straight. Yeah. No fault of his own. I mean, the poor guy, and Nick McFadden was a few laps before that. He had almost done the exact same thing as Bobby. The problem with Imola is when you go from the start there, it kind of has a left-hand turn before you really get to a real turn, but it's kind of like you're accelerating off the middle part of the tire. And if it was really wet through there and you hydroplane and you had a Bobby Fong type of incident on the straightaway there at Imola, there's not any runoff. I mean, when I say there's not any runoff, not like VIR that's just off into a big field. And then you run a big problem of bikes hitting, barriers and coming back out in front of a group of people, or bodies obviously hitting barriers. So you could definitely see that. It's got a couple little idiosyncrasies about it, G-Dub, that has, where you're accelerating through a turn and it's not really a turn. Your head down, bum up and on the gas, but you're off the middle part of the tire. So you have that risk of maybe hydroplaning and falling on what would essentially kind of be a straightaway. So again, I don't know if that was the big problem, but Imola is such a great circuit, Greg. I mean, if you've never,
I haven't been there, but that's where I was going next with
great.
You, actually, to talk about the circuit, because I'm not a big chicane guy. Obviously, I'm a bigger fella.
Yeah.
I like flowing type racetracks, and I remember when they started putting chicanes in Imola, and I thought, they've completely ruined it. But no one really complains anymore about those chicanes, and they really have turned out to be, race changers. Over the years, we've seen some amazing races, between like Bayless and Colin Edwards come to mind in World Superbike, and some of the races they had there. Yeah. And so, I mean, do those chicanes blow the flow? Or obviously they were needed, because without those chicanes, those would have been straightaways that would have been crazy fast. But,
well, I was just going to ask you that same question of like, why do we put chicanes in racetracks?
Well, for a variety of reasons, to slow things down. That's exactly what the definition of a chicane is anyway in Japanese,
Just slow stuff down to make it to where it can be safer. And Imola has, let's not forget that, that's where Ayrton Senna lost his life in what used to be an incredibly fast turn one. So That's why they built that little left, right, left complex at Imola. And I got to ride it, after, when they had that left, right, left, and it was very flowing and it was good. There's a couple places that you go around the world where the chicanes aren't that bad. Road America comes to mind. I think when they had to fix the kink there at Road America, the ones at Imola, the one on top of the hill is definitely a lot more awkward than the one right before start finish line. But there's definitely, really this weekend, that was the game changer, I think, for Johnny. It was the game changer because his bike worked so good through there and he was so fast. He could get in there. It almost looked like he could get in there a little bit tighter than most, and he could exit tighter than most. It just looked much more agile. So they can work for and against you. But I'd hate to see Imola get lost off the calendar. I think most riders really like it, as far as they think it's a fun place. But each year when these bikes get faster, those walls get closer, so you've always got to look at that stuff.
And it used to be a bigger deal to go to Imola with World Superbike because FG Sport used to own them, which was an Italian-based company. Now that Dorna owns it, it's still, you still have Ducati and you still have a lot of those teams that are based in and around, or, Italy or Italians. So I think it's having that round is a big deal. So hopefully it'll stay on the calendar for sure. All right. For this next one, Jason, we had a bit of a laugh, to say the least, because I know what people are saying about Rea's win, right? They're like, okay, this is it. Is it his championship now? Like, do they have everything sorted? So I said to Johnny, like, is this the magic bullet that solves all your problems, or was your win the Imola effect?
Yeah. For me, I think it's the Imola effect, honestly. But I have to have the optimism and confidence that we can carry it through. I really convinced myself that we were going to make it happen this weekend. I had a feeling, and all week prior in the gym and on the bicycle, I was visualizing winning, and I said to my guys before the weekend that I had a great feeling, and it happened. So just try and keep it going. Of course, we're going to come to some tracks that we can't win at. The level's so high this year. The race lap times, even in Imola and the rest of the tracks, have been so much faster. So just keep an open mind. Try not to get disappointed by thinking, that's us on schedule now. We still have a lot of areas to improve, and the team are working hard. The atmosphere in the garage is great, and let's see, Jerez next, and it's a track that you don't need the most power in the world. You need a bike that keeps the tire, that turns well, and it's pretty stop and go, but flowing at the same time. So it should suit us pretty good. But let's see how it goes in pre-practice one. But we got a couple of weeks to wait to then. We got a test in Misano next week or the week after, and then I fly straight to Suzuka to do a 2-day Suzuki 8-hour test in that spec bike. So I'll be arriving to Jerez, straight from Japan. They'll get me a nice big seat at the front of the plane to rest up on. But it's a pretty tight schedule, to be fair.
So he'll at least have a lot of seat time before he gets to the next race, but crazy schedule.
Well, I love the honesty. I mean, as a racer, you never want to show any kind of weakness, whether it be on track or verbally. But the fact that he said it's the Imola effect is amazing, because he knows that was a track that he felt really confident coming into. He felt good about it. And I think that I would look at his victories a lot different had Bautista not even seen the place before Friday practice. And then with the weather and maybe the lack of quality track time, I would sit there and I'd kind of tend to think to myself, well, then he really did have a big advantage. But Bautista saw the track already. And I know that one of his days were rained out, or at least partially was rained out at the test. But he had seen the place. He knew what he was getting himself into. Now, when you talk about Jerez coming up, I think that the biggest fear that I have there, if there's any, is the fast right-hander that leads onto the back straightaway at Jerez is going to be, will Johnny be able to get close enough to work something? But the last set of right-handers before the last left-hander onto the front straightaway at Jerez will be a place that I think that the Cowie will work incredible. I've been there and watched him run through there. I'm hoping that a couple of the Yamahas can get up there as well. And of course, Chaz too. 43 points is nothing. It's really not insurmountable at all with as much season as we have left. If anybody has any little issues, then it can open the championship wide open again. But I think until we see everybody kind of be able to catch up to Bautista at a couple of the other circuits, right now, it didn't hurt Batista to fall in behind his teammate and finish third, did it, Greg?
No, it didn't.
I mean, get those points, get out of there.
And he may be smart
then
enough.
With the rain, he got even luckier.
He may be smart enough to just go, okay, I got a third place bike this weekend or whatever, second place, third place. I'm good because the championship's long and we're going to other racetracks. But, one of the things that I noticed, I don't have it in, that was our last little bit with Jonathan, but we were talking when we weren't recording, and I said, man, did you get a chance to go back and look at the start of the races at all? Because I can't remember which one it was, Jason, but one of those starts, Bautista had a bad start, and he almost passed Jonathan into turn one. And and he said, yeah, no, I saw that. Trust me. I saw it. So it's not like all of a sudden, like what Jonathan did at Imola was setup and pure riding. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, it's not like the Cowie all of a sudden fixed anything. He did tell me that they, as you heard, they threw the setup in that they had last year, but then they also refined just a couple of little things that allowed him to get that sector 2 and 3, that advantage that he had. So they continuously developing the bike. I think maybe there's a bit of a mindset with some of the World Superbike fans, and I'm guilty of this too at the very beginning of the year, is that, oh boy, the Kawasaki is what it is. It's got this speed deficit. It's got this whatever. But Jonathan, this is now the second time he's been on this podcast, keeps saying that they're going to work. There's areas to be improved. They're going to keep developing it. So he's looking at the strength of the motorcycle, not the weaknesses of the motorcycle. And he's saying, okay, our strength is the front end. It's stability. Obviously, he can get into a corner at the moment better than a Ducati can. So let's work on all those things to make it better. The question is it going to be enough as we get deep in the season? And as you know, Jason, my philosophy on racing is simple. When I have to explain racing to people, I say this: the person who gets to the next corner first wins. That's it. And the easiest, it's
pretty simple.
And the easiest way to get to the next corner is acceleration. So acceleration's huge, but if you can do what we've seen in the past, people do in years and years, if you can disrupt someone's flow or disrupt someone's ability to get to the next corner, then you can win races.
There's going to be a point this year, like when you see these two guys in Parc Fermé together, they look pretty chippy and happy, and they're very, very congratulatory to each other. I'm talking about Rea and Batista. But there is going to come a point, I'm telling you, where there's going to be some roughing up. I know it's going to happen. We've seen little bits of it. Like the thing at Thailand to me was so blown out of proportion. Like he went underneath, Batista went under and Johnny just cut it back up underneath him, and they made like this big deal about, oh yeah, Johnny's playing hard. It's like he had the line and he went underneath. But there'll be places, and especially if some people can start taking some shots at it, there'll be places where there'll be some roughing up. And I definitely think that we've got a long way to go in this championship. And it was nice to see a couple other guys get up there in the mix, even like you say, with Top Rack being up there as well. And going Suzuka testing. I mean, Greg, that's where parts kind of start to get tested for even 2020. That's where when you go to Japan, you kind of start seeing some other things start to get developed sometimes. So these guys now are going to be slammed. What do you think what do you think, G-Dub? You think it's an advantage to be on a team that is going to be as active as Johnny's going to be? I mean, I know even with Alex Lowe's and Vandermark, those guys will be starting their Suzuka testing too, and they are on a bike all the time. And Batista's going to be hanging out, not riding at all. I don't know who I'd rather be in that.
I think it depends on your mindset. I know, for years I worked with Freddie Spencer, and Freddie used to talk to me. Yeah. And for those that don't know, Freddie Spencer is the only person in the world, I think, that ever won a 250 and a 500 GP championship in the same year. And Freddie had to test both those bikes on top of his racing schedule. Yeah. And he told me straight up, it was the testing that burned him out, not the race weekends. Race weekends were like, oh man, I just have what I have and now I'm good. I just have to go out and perform. But when you're constantly testing, so I think it just depends. We knew that the late great Nicky Hayden, he was a tester. He would grind laps out and grind them out. And if you looked at all the years he spent in MotoGP, almost every test we went to, he would be either tied for the most laps done or a very, have the most tied or second for most laps done in a day. And I just think it just depends on your personality. I think for sure having talked to Jonathan Rea a few times now, he loves to ride a motorcycle. He loves racing.
No
he
question.
loves racing, but he loves riding too. And so I think that plays in his favor, where you and I both know some racers that are like, no need to ride a motorcycle till I need to ride a motorcycle, And I'm like,
Agreed. I think that the race itself, the 8 hours is grueling. It's hard, and there's a lot of work leading up to it. So I agree with you, G-Dub, as far as the testing part is definitely the hardest. So big thanks to Johnny for being on our podcast again. It's really cool to know that he's out there listening to us, and it's great. We had another big race this weekend, Greg, in World Supersport. I don't know if you caught it, but it's been pretty close between teammates this year. Randy Krummenacher was able to beat Federico Caricasulo on what essentially was the last lap, a lap that got red flagged. So there was I don't know if there was really no controversy. I really liked how they did it. They went back to a segment rather than going back one full complete lap. They went back to a sector before the lap was red flagged, and it was identified that Krummenacher gets the victory over Caricasulo. Rafael de Rosa finishes third, albeit some way back, 13 seconds back. We had Akubo, Badavini, Vinales, Jules Clazel, who was one of our front leaders at the beginning of the race, ends up seventh, with Mahias eighth, Sumer ninth, and Sebastian was 10th. I think the big one there is when you watch this race, and you and I had discussed it just a little bit prior, the big incident between Clazel, Mahias, and Gradinger coming onto the front straightaway. It was a very awkward, funny, weird-looking crash, wasn't it?
Coming out of a chicane, you had, Krummenacher, Caricasulo? They were leading the way, right?
Clazel, they were leading the way up, and then Clazel was third.
Clazel was third, and then right behind him was Mahias and Gradinger. And Mahias just clobbered the back of Clazel and went down, and then Gradinger came back and kind of didn't jump over the bike, but it flopped over on its right side and got caught under it. It was a weird crash. To me, that crash looked like Clazel either missed a shift or just didn't get on the gas when he normally would. And it was something that if you haven't seen it, just go Google. I think World Superbike has let the clip out as a free clip, so you should be able to find it on their website or Twitter, something, Jason. But my question for you, I think, comes down to when you are racing that close, when you literally are wheel to wheel with someone else, how much trust goes into you as a rider, knowing that the rider in front of you is good, has rhythm, and you don't ever think that they're going to have a problem, right? I mean, is it who, like, I don't want to point blame necessarily, because I don't think it was, I really think it was a race incident of riders just being
I agree with
close.
you 100%. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. But to me, it almost looked like the cause of that would have been more Clazel than Mahias behind him, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and normally we always talk about, the responsibility of the overtaking rider to make a clean pass. Yeah, this one was a little bit different, and I agree with you, because it was on the exit of a corner, and these guys, Greg, you get used to riding around guys, you get used to racing against people, you get used to, you build a trust in guys because you see them so often on the racetrack, especially these guys being in that lead group. Mahias hadn't been close all year. If you remember, he's a former World Supersport champion, and he signed with Kawasaki this year for the Pacetti racing team. So the Kawi, for him this year, he hasn't been really up front. And in this race, he was setting fast laps to catch the leading three. And then that pulled Gradinger along as well. Gradinger started to come along with them after they got through De Rosa, and they started to go through. Now, one of the things you just said about the possibility of a guy missing a shift, like we saw Clazel miss a shift, let's not forget they're coming out of a right-hander, and Clazel's shifter now is on the right side, Greg, because of his bad leg. He's got a horrible left leg, so they've rerouted the whole system so that he can shift on the right side of the motorcycle. So him coming out of a right-hander, it's very well could have been maybe he just missed a shift, and because obviously Mahias isn't going to make that big of a mistake to just ride up the back of a guy the way that accident was. It was a very awkward crash. Happy to see all of them okay. But I agree with you. It could have been like a misshift just because, like Clazel, like he has that shifter on the right side now.
I didn't even realize that. That's a really good bit of information there by Jason Pridmore, ladies and gentlemen. You take that to the bank.
Yeah. He walks worse than I do. I've seen him walk, and it's bad. And so yeah, poor guy. But you can't. I'll tell you, this year when you look at Krummenacher, what he's done, you could see Caricasulo was so visibly pissed off that he lost that race because he's trying so hard to win these races and he feels he should be winning. And we've seen him win, but Krummenacher himself has done a really good job so far this year in holding on to this World Supersport Championship lead. He looks like he's going to be the guy to beat.
No doubt. He's got three wins and 2 second places so far this season. Does Krummenacher.
Consistent, isn't he?
Jay, also want to send a shout out to De Rosa. MV Augusta,
yes,
that's 675. He puts that thing on the podium. I wonder, I haven't talked to PJ, but I wonder if you're PJ looking over, because that was a bike he used to race, factory team, and be like, oh my God, it finished the race. How incredible. But I do.
Yeah.
Right. But I love that. Yeah. I love that bike. So it was, Yamaha, MV Augusta. Then it was a couple Cowies, then a couple Yamahas. Also, we haven't really talked about her yet, but Maria Herrera, who's in this championship, she finished 15th, and that's her third 15th or third points paying position, I believe. Her third points paying position. So she's finished 15th 3 times this season out of the 5. So she's in the mix. It's a lot of people are just like, it's a
so
PR.
Hard, man.
Yeah. But the thing is, Jay, her qualifying time, she did a 52.7, and then her best lap of the race was a 153.3, and it was right there with 13th, 14th, and 15th in terms of that similar lap time, and so she was there in a fight for 14th spot. So, I'm glad to see her there. There were a lot of people that didn't finish, a couple people that she beat, so I like seeing her in the mix as well. So there's just so many good stories in World Supersport. The thing about World Supersport, though, Jason, is you had raced it before, is this now a class, or, the class was designed to feed World Superbike, but it doesn't really seem like it's doing that, does it?
No, I agree. And Cortese, who won the championship last year, is thought to have bought that ride with the Yamaha team that he's on. And it's just so frustrating to know that you can be world champion and you're still buying a ride. And somebody like Krummenacher has been around for so many years. He was in Moto2, and so, and he's been in Superbike now, and now he's gone back to Supersport. And, you'd think that when you win a championship, it can bump you forward. And, let's hope that is the case and we get back to that. I definitely see motorcycling racing right now so much. It's trending up as opposed to how it has been for a long time. It was obviously trending down for years and years and years. I think over the last 2 years, it's kind of evened out, but we still need to get to a point we talk about all the time where these guys need to make a living. On the last note on this, Greg, I don't know if you saw, but I'm not sure if you have any information, not to put you on the spot, but Massimo Roccoli is really the one that caused that red flag. It looked pretty bad. I haven't heard how he's doing. So thoughts are out with him because it looked like he got flung pretty good there at the end of that race. And that's really what caused that red flag. But World Supersport 300 was part of that rain out also. They didn't get to ride. So that's why we're not talking so much about 300. But yeah, when you talk about the females that are riding in that series over there with Herrera, Anna Carrasco, I believe, had qualified third at Imola, a race that she had won. A race that she had won last year. So I know that got rained out as well. So too bad the weather played a part at Imola. And let's move on to Jerez and see how that one goes for these guys.
All right, and let's move on to MotoGP then, because coming up this weekend is the French GP. Jason, what can we expect? Because you've raced Le Mans a few times.
I have.
So on a GP bike, what do you think we can expect this weekend?
That they're going to be way faster than I ever was around there on another bike. So yes, you know what popped up in my feed this morning and I don't know, I don't dwell on this stuff at all, but that crash that Jack Miller had there 2 years ago. Do you remember that one?
I do.
Where it goes through turn one and it was so big and it just popped up and I'm like, oh, that's right. The guys are at Le Mans this week. And then I remember he was like back on the bike and qualifying. I remember seeing him hobbling back. I mean, tough as nails, but what can I expect? I think that there's a couple of things that really pop into my brain now when it comes to MotoGP. Let's not deny the fact that we got 9 riders within 4. We got 4 riders within 9 points of each other. Marquez leads the table, then Rins, Dovizioso, Rossi, and then Petrucci rounds out our top 5. Our next 5 would be Vinales, Miller, Nakagami, who I think is kind of a cool story to see him in the top 10.
Yeah,
Crutchlow and Morbidelli. So when you look on the up, I think the first thing that comes to mind, the big surprise for me this year so far, and thinking about this morning before you and I went on, is the pace of Morbidelli and Quartararo on what would be considered the satellite Yamahas. I know that they're on bikes that are very, very much like Rossi and Vinales at this point, but I think That would be the surprising one for me so far. Quartararo's pace has been just insane. And who would have thought at the beginning of the year that we'd be talking about a French rider going to Le Mans that isn't Johann Zarco?
Yeah, that is a good question. And it's what MotoGP has been hyping. And it was one of the things I was going to talk to you about, because they've been hyping those two riders. But I hate to say it, Zarco is not even part of the conversation. I mean, he's a French rider going to a French track, and that means a lot. And I totally get it.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, KTM has not taken any steps that they need to in order to close the gap to even make him competitive to race comfortably inside the top, say, 8, at this point.
Yeah.
And Pol Espargaro is just, well, besides his big mistake last race, I don't know if you heard about that or not.
No, tell me.
Oh, so, and dude, come on. Tell me that you've been close down this road. We definitely both know people that have done this. So he's racing with Lorenzo, and he gets by Lorenzo for, I wanted to say it was 8th or something like that. And he read his pit board wrong. And so they came across to take the white flag. He goes into turn 1 and just sits up. And Lorenzo goes on by. Yeah. And he realizes, whoop, I got one
Lorenzo
more.
Gets that 12th spot. He had 12th gifted to him.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Well, that sucks. I mean, yeah, because those guys, they go strictly off their board, and
but he was what Pol said, Jay, was that he was just so focused because he had to reel Lorenzo in, and it's Lorenzo, and I get it. You know what I mean? And he passed him, and he was so focused on keeping him behind him. And when they came across the line for that to take the white flag, Lorenzo was probably 0.7 of a second, maybe half a second behind. So it wasn't like he checked out on Lorenzo. But yeah, if you watch the video, there's a clip in there where he did an interview on MotoGP.com, and it was just like, oh man. But he said he'll never do it again, and I bet you he won't. But anyway, so
let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a question about Pol Espargaro, Greg.
Yeah.
Knowing the hype that Zarco got when he got signed, and I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned from this, that people want to be part of a factory team, and it's like, I got to be on a factory bike, and I got to have this, and I got to have that. I think that we can learn something by this, because Zarco, with 7 points right now, sitting in 18th spot, is looking up at a lot of people. But Pol Espargaro, would you consider putting him on another bike after what you've seen this guy do? I mean,
oh my God,
it just seems like he kind of just gets on with his job.
Yes,
you'd love to be able to see him get marked into a spot there, right? It seems like once you're in MotoGP now, everybody comes from Moto 2. Everybody comes just straight from Moto 2 and up. If there was a year where there didn't seem to have been, and it could even be this year, with the exception of Baldassarre, I think that there's not really a lot of guys that I would pull from Moto 2. If there was a spot open on a proper factory bike, would you consider Pol Espargaro?
I definitely would. Yeah,
I would too.
Because he's outperforming everyone on that equipment, and the paddock knows it. They can see what he's got. He's definitely riding some of his best, in my opinion, and I think he's getting the most out of the KTM machine, which, by the way, I absolutely love. Like, I love looking at it. I think the livery is fantastic.
I do too.
I think it's all that stuff's great. My concern with the KTM, as we kind of, I guess we're just talking about MotoGP now. My concern with the KTM is this, Jason. I think that when you look at the technology that you have in MotoGP, you have 2 different engine configurations that are being used. Everyone's using a twin spar aluminum frame, you know what I mean? Blah, 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 double-sided swing arm. KTM is the one that they're married to an idea. And I think that in the manufacturers that I've seen married to ideas, of course, Eric Buell and the EBR and that single disc, and a great, unbelievable feel, on that EBR. The front end was one of the best feeling motorcycles ever, but when it got to World Superbike, it didn't have the stopping power. And eventually, Larry Pegram tested, a normal brake setup, and it worked. Oh, imagine that. And I think with KTM, if they're tied to a steel chassis and that trellis frame that they're using type of situation, I wonder if that's not something that's holding them back, because the motor's strong. I mean, we can see that they have a good power plant. And so I know the ready to race philosophy and what KTM wants to do, but eventually somebody at KTM, in my view, and my view is, not a lot, is they're going to have to rethink some things, whether it's their WP suspension on the satellite team, you know what I mean? Or there's got to be something where at one point you have to go, okay, they're beating us, so let's at least go do what they're doing and then improve from there.
Can't beat them, join them. You think about what Gigi did at Ducati, and you think to yourself, what would he do if he got hired at KTM? What's the first thing he would do? You see somebody like KTM right now, all these teams are making steps forward. Okay, so a lot of the bikes at the front, the Hondas, the Suzuki's, Ducatis, Yamahas, their steps right now are small steps. So they're making steps, they're making progress, they're doing things. Ducati's got to make KTM essentially has to make a 2 to 3 big step to get up to where those other guys are right now. I think that if you look at just one specific lap and one specific lap time, Paul Espargaro, he gets himself up into that qualifying 2 quite often now, and it's like, but they've got to make a bigger step. And you look at the points, you got Espargaro with 21, and then you got Oliveira and Zarco with 7 each, and Simon's not even on the map. He doesn't have a point yet this year. Yeah. So, and so when you look at it all, it's like KTM, the quality of their riders. We've seen Hafiz score points. We've seen that before. You've seen Oliveira, I think, has done a great job. Tremendous rider. But they got to make a big step. And Espargaro is the only one so far making that bike shine. I think they're going to have to make a big step, Greg, like you said. And if you get a great mind like Gigi come in there, and if I'm not saying that's what it would happen, but I'm saying if a guy like him came in with his reputation and said, we got to change this, I think it would help everybody going forward. But that said, who you got this weekend? Who you got? Put you on the spot.
In terms of race?
I think it's going to be a close one.
Man, that's a really difficult question without actually watching practice times. Because, let me ask you this question.
Look into the future, G-Dub. Look into the future.
Let me fish around. If you had to define Le Mans, is it more of a front-end track or more of a rear-end track? And you know what I mean by that.
It's stop and go kind of. It's very stop and go. So you stop and go track right off the bat. You start thinking to yourself, well, the Ducatis should be pretty good there.
Yep.
Because of that, Yamaha and Greg, I didn't really do my homework as well this morning, but Yamaha has an incredible record, I believe, at Le Mans.
Yep.
It wouldn't be normally be a track that you would sit there and think, okay, the Yamaha is going to be great, but you don't really spend a lot of time on the edge of the tire there. There's turn 3 coming there. There's a big long right hander after you go under the Dunlop Bridge that you spend time on the edge of the tire.
But overall lap, if you don't spend a lot of time on the edge of the tire, then philosophically, I don't even know what I'm trying to say.
Come on, get it out. You got it.
Philosophically, what I'm trying to say is Suzuki, it might not be a good Suzuki track because Suzuki shines on the edge of the tire, right? But getting it up on the meat of the tire and driving out has now become Ducati and a bit of Honda.
Correct. I just think that this is why it leads into something so great, because you're going to have Quartararo, who's coming off his first pole position, an absolute heartache in Jerez a couple of weeks ago, is going to be out to try to right the ship there. I think it's going to be an incredible race. This could be, so far this year, it could be the race of the year for me, because if you look at a couple of the other races, they've been close, but they've been a bit processional. This could be a race where you could see 6, 7, 8 guys. I think that Suzuki does incredible towards the end of the race too, because it's not hard on tires. I haven't looked at the weather. I haven't looked at anything, but it's going to be really hard. I think that I can see 3 Yamahas at the front. I can see pretty much all the Yamahas at the front, and I could see the Suzuki as well. Maybe a Honda. I think Crutchlow will be okay there too. I mean, literally, this is a kind of a track where you could see 8 or 9 guys in that lead group for half the race, I would say.
I can't tell you. Sorry, Jay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, from a historical standpoint, if you look at Quartararo at home, because we oftentimes make a big deal. He's French. He's at Le Mans. But in Moto2 last year, he finished 8th. In Moto2 in 2017, he finished 18th. In Moto3 in 16, 6th. And in 2015, he wasn't even classified. It's not like Quartararo has gone to Le Mans and been like unbelievable, and now he gets an infusion of all this confidence, and things are clicking. So I'm hesitant on a Quartararo at the moment, to say that he's going to get out there and that this is going to be a race for him, because it traditionally hasn't been a race where he has shined. But on the other hand, Quartararo in his career, Jay, only has a couple of results. Like the fact that he's sitting in the position that he's in, a lot of people in that paddock knew something, because he has in his entire career, which began in 2015 in Moto3, he has 4 total podiums. He has 1 win, which was last year at Catalunya, and he's got 3 second-place finishes, of which 1 was 2018, and the other 2 were 2015. He went 16, 17, and 5 or 6 races deep into 18 before he even got on the box, and he was signed before 2018, if I remember correctly. Wasn't he?
Yep. No. And you're exactly right. And he was, for me, he has been by far and away like the superstar of the year so far. I mean, take away obviously that Marquez is doing what he's doing, but
Rins
really
is
nice
another one who could be in that category, right? Like you're talking about.
He's been in that category for me though. Has Rins. I've loved him since last year when he started doing really well, and I'm saying like that he's kind of the new Rins for me. Is Quartararo is and I love and I like Morbidelli because I think he's incredible. I think it's going to be a great weekend. I'm looking forward to checking out the results and seeing what happens. And even with Moto 2, Moto 3, I'll be glued to it. I'm not going to be going anywhere this weekend, so I'm happy about that. And one of our few weekends at home. So MotoGP should be. I think it's going to be really good, G-Dub. I think it's going to be fun. This last weekend, just not down the road, not far from me, Greg. We had the half mile at Pomona. American Flat Track Series came, and I got to watch the races. Did you get to watch them?
I did not get to watch them. No. Mm-mm.
Yeah, I watched them. Brandon Robinson rode amazing. Like it just looked like his night from the start. Briar Bauman finished second, Hulbert third, Van der Kooi finished fourth. Jarrett Mees, frequent guy on our podcast, ends up fifth and defending champion. Bronson Bauman was sixth. Brandon Price, Davis Fisher, Robert Pearson, and Larry Pegram 10th. And by the way, hey, listen.
Yep.
The guy won his semi. Pegram won his semi, and he led off the start. I would love, you know what? I'm gonna have to call him and give him some heartache because he led into turn 1 and slid he just slid up just a little bit on the first turn and just got annihilated by like 8 people. He went from first into turn 1. I think he was 9th or 10th after the first lap. So, but Pegram, man, the guy's still competitive. He's doing so good.
PJ was 13th, JD Beach 11th. It's a couple on the road race side of things. First Harley Davidson was Sammy Halbert. And so it was nice to see those guys competitive.
Yeah, but they had a red flag in this race, Greg. And at the beginning of the race, Sammy Halbert got himself up into second very quickly and got in behind Brandon Robinson. And I tell you, he had the pace to win. He had the pace to win. He was there. And he was, if you get the chance, go back and watch the first 6 laps or 8 laps, whatever it was before the red flag came out. Henry Wiles had fallen and took out a little bit of the air fence. So they did the right thing and red flagged the race. And he was up and okay and was able to restart. But if you want to see a guy riding close to somebody, like I used to always get nervous watching Haga. Haga used to ride so close to people all of the time. It looked like you could slide a piece of Noriyuki Haga used to be able to slide a piece of paper between the front and rear wheel of him and another competitor. We're watching this race, and Sammy Halbert is doing everything possible to get past. The line at Pomona was very narrow. It was a bit of a boring race, if I'm being honest, all 3 of them, because it pretty much once you got the start, it kind of, that's where you were going to finish. I think that's why it made it hard for guys to pass and so on. If you slid off the groove a little bit, you're a little bit hosed. But Halbert in the first 6 laps, and then he got a horrendous start. He kind of had what Larry did in the first one. When Sammy started from second after the red flag, he slid up off the groove and got passed by like 5 people, and he just couldn't quite make up that spots. But you got to watch it, Greg. It was, I think that the Harley actually had some pace. Yeah.
What they do is they do it on fanschoice.tv, and then that's it until it airs on NBCSN. Then they'll post it back up. So it's like you got to watch it live, or else you're kind of locked out for I think a week or something like that. So
is that what it is?
Yeah, okay. I'm just kind of waiting for it to come back up there. Yeah, but I'm looking forward to it. I like watching Brandon Robinson race. He's this is the first time this year that we've seen a repeat winner. So in the twins class. So Brandon Robinson, our first repeat winner in that. So, and I'll be interested to talk to JD Beach and PJ about it. But these guys are racing so much. I heard that Jared Mees was one of the guys that benefited from that red flag. He was a bit further back, and then that red flag got him 5th point. So
Yeah, and I missed a little bit at the beginning. I missed because I was traveling, so I missed a little bit. But I got to watch. I got to watch the singles main event. It was a little bit of the same type of thing. Ryan Wells, JD's teammate on the Estenson Racing, he ended up winning that one. But it's actually been pretty close racing. Dan Bromley finished fourth in that. He was the only one really making any big moves, but it was kind of, again, it looked like the groove was it was a very one line type of track, was Pomona. So yeah, it wasn't, the Sacramento Mile got canceled this weekend.
Yeah,
Have you heard about that?
Yeah, it did, because of rain.
Because there was like a tropical storm up north or something. And
yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
How unusual is it that a California race gets stopped before they even get to the race weekend because there's so much precipitation
because of a tropical storm?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Pretty weird.
Hey,
right?
You guys are getting ready to fall off the map, man. That California, man, you guys are going to hell in a handbasket. You understand what I'm saying? You guys are crazy.
Yeah, we'll be out in the ocean soon.
We'll be out in the
apparently.
ocean. By the way, in the AFT Twins class, Briar Bauman leads that championship 102-89 over Brandon Robinson. Mees 78 points. So it's getting to be kind of a, Bauman, he's got to win a third and three second place finishes. So it's looking pretty good right now. Yep. So you have 4 different race winners in 5 races as well. So because Bauman,
it appears that
Robinson,
Mees,
and
other people have
JD Beach. What?
Yeah, it appears, Greg, that like other people have really got a handle on this Indian now, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, that's what it appears to look like from a guy who has been following this stuff, not as much as I would have probably in the past, but I definitely enjoy watching it. But it really does look like a couple of these guys have got these Indians figured out. And when we start getting to these summer months, these hot months, it'll be interesting to see if Jared starts really closing the gap on them. But I'm so used to seeing Jared up front every weekend, setting the pace, and to see him starting kind of far back and some other stuff is a bit surprising. So, though, he's going to be moving forward.
All right, Jason, that means it's time for our quick shift segment presented by ARAI, where we'll rattle off some questions and have 60 seconds to talk about it. Well, Jay, for 3 generations, ARAI has been making some of the world's best helmets, and of course, ARAI helmets meets all safety standards, but they also pride themselves in a blend of engineering tech and human craftsmanship that makes an ARAI helmet fit better and feel better, which also protects you better. Hey, your head is worth the best, so visit ARAIAmericas.com for more information on tech, fit, and paint jobs. ARAIAmericas with an S.com, because you owe it to you. All right, Pridmore, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to give you 60 seconds-ish. I mean, if anybody ever timed this, they know sometimes I'm so wrapped up in the conversation, I forget to do that deal. But all right, I'm going to throw one at you here, guy. All right, check this out. The Canadian Superbike Series begins this weekend in Shannonville Motorsports Park, all right?
Mm-hmm.
And the timeless Jordan Szoke is trying to defend his 13th Mopar Canadian Superbike Championship. He won 13th last season, JP. It's his 4th in a row.
Amazing.
Now, here's the thing.
Yep.
He returns to Kawasaki after 8 years with BMW, and he's trying to get that 14th. 2 questions. 1, do you put anything on numbers? Like, you know what I mean? He's at unlucky number 13. I think it's lucky 13, but a lot of people call it unlucky 13 because we're racers. I know a lot of people do. And can he do it again? And do you think the transition from BMW to Kawasaki is a big deal? Go, Pridmore.
Wow. Has he been on a BMW for 8 years?
8 years already, yeah.
Man, it just flies by, doesn't it?
Doesn't it, though, dude?
Look, Jordan's incredible rider. You ever seen the guy on a trials bike?
Yeah, like wicked good.
Really good. Yeah, like he's national caliber. Like, he's amazing. So, do I put anything on numbers? Not 13. Really. Like, 13 is, I don't. Like, no. 13 to me, and I know that was your race number. I know Melly's used that race number. 13 is just a number to me. I'm not like a big superstitious guy.
Mike Ciccato was 13. Yeah,
that's right, Mike Ciccato. I don't know, Greg. That I think the big thing is that when you look at the Canadian Superbike Championship, their series is short. I actually watched the last, I don't even know how I found it, but I found Mossport on there maybe 5 or 6 days ago. And I watched the last 5 laps of it, and it was
they changed it a little bit.
Ben Young was there, Kenny Reedman, who both guys that we've seen down here before, and Szoke, and all battling. And Szoke looked like he was on the slowest of the 3 bikes, to be honest, and Ben Young won. So that was obviously last year. I don't see anybody really stepping up to beat him. And I can't say that going from a BMW to a Kawasaki is a big disadvantage. So yeah, I kind of see it in his future to possibly win number 14, and amazing record. I mean, to sustain that many years is pretty cool. Greg, the Northwest 200 is going on this week in Northern Ireland. It's really the first of the big meets of the year as far as street racing goes over there, actual pure road racing goes, I should say. You know, when you look at it, what's your take, Greg, on the Isle of Man, the Northwest, Macau, those kind of races? What's the Ulster Grand Prix? What's your take on it? You've never been to one, have you?
I went to a road race that they did in Colorado a few years ago. Do you remember that? They had streets to Colorado.
Did they do it at Steamboat Springs?
Steamboat, yeah. So I've seen that. And of course, I've raced Spa. That's kind of 3 roads. But no,
dude, they're going back to Spa. World Endurance is going back to Spa in 2022. Put your stuff together, Greg. Get us a ride over there.
We got to go. Oh, get us a ride over there. I understand. I understand the danger associated with road racing. I do, but no matter what you say, I'm a former racer, jackass, and I also understood.
Thank you.
I also understood the risks that I took when I strapped the helmet on, and I just think that there's just a certain type of individual that just goes out and can do the road race stuff. When I was at the height of this show I used to host on Speed Channel 2, Wheel Tuesday, I would get calls every year from somebody related to the Isle of Man saying, "Will you come over and race the Isle of Man?" And I didn't do it. And I didn't do it because I wasn't scared of doing it. I was actually enthused of doing it. I understood that you need years at an Isle of Man, you know what I mean, to really go fast around there. And I thought, it's too dangerous just for 1 weekend of it, or 1 week of experience. Meaning, like, if I was going to be committed to a road racing series, especially the Isle of Man, I would say I'm going to do this for 5 years. So by the 5th year, or the 3rd year, or whatever it is, I'll know the circuit and be comfortable there, that type of thing. But I think they're great. I'm not a big history buff. I'm not one who sits around and says, "Oh, history is really important," and da da da. But I do like the fact that before there were dedicated road race tracks that we get to race at now that have homologation and safety, like we talked about before, that this is the way it started. And I think that, yeah, things are a little dangerous, but I really like it. And I don't know if you saw a clip of Jeremy McWilliams is out there racing on the Northwest
he's
200.
On a twin, yeah,
he's on a twin, and Johnny Rea actually retweeted it because he said he comes out of a corner, dude, and used the curb like a normal street curb as a berm. Coming through a left-hand corner. I think I would love to go watch and just see, what separates the boys from the men, because I like them. I mean, I know this is long, but we're going to
be longer too, because I got my 2 cents to add to this too. And I think that that's a very diplomatic way that you looked at all of that, because it is racing and we are motorcycle guys. And these guys take a lot of heat for going over and doing these races. And last year, if you look at it statistically, was a very, very tough year on actually pure road racing itself. It seems like they go through peaks and valleys in this sport where it's, I think that once Velocity started covering the Isle of Man over here in America, probably the biggest question I got from my friends that didn't know exactly like where I raced, how I raced, was, "Hey, have you ever done the Isle of Man?" Because it would be a talking point for people that weren't really into racing, that might be sitting in a room where there's a TV going and they showed it.
Yeah.
I think that when you look at what these guys are doing, and girls, by the way, Patricia Fernandez is over there doing the Northwest this weekend. When you look at what it is, it gets in your blood, Greg. And what you said earlier about going over and doing the Isle of Man once for a one-time thing, it's almost impossible not to go back. Jeremy Toy comes to mind. He went back and did it again after he did it his first time. It's just a different type of racing. It's a different style. It's a different mentality. I think that once you do it, I always just felt like myself. There were times in my career, as you know, I hate bringing luck into play, but I felt like I was a little bit unlucky, even like tipping off this year at Phillip Island. It's one of those things where if you're a little bit unlucky at a racetrack like that or at a place like that, it can be really devastating. When I'm looking at the top speeds these guys did yesterday, G-Dub, Lee Johnson went 195 mile an hour. And I'm talking about a little country road, 195 mile an hour. Michael Rudder, Connor Cummins, all went 195 mile an hour. And then you had Dean Harrison, Seeley, and McGinnis. McGinnis is on that Norton. They all went 193 mile an hour or faster. And there was a video put up by a friend of mine and an ex-teammate from a long time ago named Martin Jessup, who's done the BSB championship. He put a video up yesterday that I saw. I'll try to send it to you, but it's about 600s, and you can hear them coming from half a mile away. It's the most incredible sound ever. And they come by him. He's on a hedge on the side of the road watching, and they're 5 abreast, full stop, 6 gear for miles. It's just a different type of racing. And I think it's something that all of our viewers, if you're a real motorcyclist, you go to a MotoGP in Spain and you go to the Isle of Man and check it out. It's pretty incredible stuff.
All right.
So, yeah.
MotoGP
right,
Le Mans.
Sorry, G-Dub.
No, I loved it. MotoGP Le Mans. In 2002, Valentino Rossi won his first premier race. In the last 4 years, Yamaha's won it 3 times. You kind of touched on it, Jason. You didn't say it, but I want to know straight up, can Rossi win now at Le Mans? And what impact would that have?
Can he? Yes. It'd be a huge impact. And I actually didn't look down our rundown, so I wasn't too far off when I said that Yamaha has done pretty well there in the past. I remember just Lorenzo doing so well there in the past. Can he win? Yeah. Rossi can win on any given weekend, I think. It's just, like we have said at the beginning of the year, it's going to be much more difficult because there's more players at the front now than there ever has been. Gone are the days of just sort of like the 3 or 4 so-called aliens of it. Now we've got a hungry, younger group of guys coming up and through that are adding to those lists. I just feel like right now, with the exception of one person on the grid, it's going to take a little bit of luck to win. For Rossi to win specifically. I think Marquez is the only guy weekend in, week out that you would continuously put your money on. But can he win? Yes, he can. Will he win? I don't think he will.
All right. I'm saying he will win. I'm telling you, this weekend,
wow,
Valentino Rossi will win a race this weekend. Hey, all
what do you know, G-Dub? Come on.
I don't know anything. I'm just saying.
Come on.
You know what my ego says? My ego says, oh, yeah, the podcast helped JD Beach win that flat track and Superbike race all within a week. You know what I mean? So why not? For all you Rossi fans out there, I'm going to stop my ego. And, of course, if it happens next week, dude, forget it. I mean, the podcast will be too big for my ego. I won't even know what to do with myself. But, yeah, sure, why not? I'll say Rossi's going to win. All right, look,
good for you.
For those of you who want to get out and see some racing, and you should, MotoGP is at Le Mans, like we just talked about. Pro Motocross, or the Outdoor Championship, as a lot of you people call it, kicks off this week in Hangtown. That's in Rancho Cordova, California. GNCC is in Ohio. AMA Supermoto is in Grand Junction, Colorado. NHRA Pro Stock Motorcycles in Richmond, Virginia. If you're around the world listening, FIM Motocross in Portugal. World Speedway. Love Speedway, by the way.
Oh, my gosh. So cool. Yep.
So cool. In Poland. And there's a ton of other local races, so get out there and watch some racing. All right, Jay. I say everybody have a great weekend. What do you have to say?
I say, G-Dub, that race, the Outdoor National that's going to be up at Hangtown, that's up in NorCal. That's where they just got done canceling the Sacramento Mile, so expect a mutter. So if you're going to that one, bring an umbrella, bring some big boots, big rubber boots. Other than that, I hope everybody has a great weekend, and thanks again for listening. And again, thanks to Johnny Rea for being on.